I put this together to explain briefly the backstory of the Kashmir situation that's happening right now. And like everything, it goes back to colonialism and Indian partition in 1947. Jammu and Kashmir was a princely state with a Muslim majority population, around 80%, but it was ruled by a Hindu Maharaja, Hari Singh. And at partition, princely states were told to either accede to India or Pakistan based on geography and population. Kashmir was geographically closer to Pakistan and socially integrated with the Muslim majority northwest. But the Maharaja preferred to stay independent and autonomous to protect his own power. But in October 1947, tribal militias from Pakistan invaded Kashmir, aiming to seize it for Pakistan because of its Muslim majority. The Maharaja, under threat, he got scared and he begged India for military assistance. India said, okay, fine, we'll help you, but you have to sign the instrument of accession first, which he did on the 26th of October 1947, formally making Jammu and Kashmir part of India. India then airlifted troops to defend the region. But important things to note between the lines is that the accession to India was signed by the ruler and not agreed by the Kashmiri people. And that's where questions of legitimacy come in. Pakistan obviously rejected the accession, arguing that a Muslim majority region should have joined it, as was the British policy. But the strategic position of Kashmir was wanted by India. India agreed to a plebiscite or a public vote on the condition that Pakistan first withdrew its forces, but this vote has never happened. And since then, Kashmir's status has remained unresolved and heavily contested by all sides. So some questions that I have or had about this situation is that if the British Empire's rule was that majority Muslim areas go to Pakistan and the Hindu majority go to India, why did they not enforce that in Kashmir? Why was Muslim majority area, an area like Kashmir, ruled by a Hindu leader, allowed to decide where it went? And then that makes me question what happened in another similar region in Hyderabad. Why did Hyderabad go to India when it was a majority Hindu area, but it had a Muslim ruler? So it was the opposite situation. And that doesn't really seem fair. Hyderabad in 1947 was the largest princely state in India. It was located in the heart of southern India. It had about 90% of Hindu population, but it was ruled by a Muslim monarch, the Nizam of Hyderabad, who was one of the richest men in the world. And like Hari Singh in Kashmir, the Nizam wanted to stay independent and not join either India or Pakistan. So after negotiations failed, in September 1948, India launched a military invasion, calling it Operation Polo, branding it as police action, and the Nizam surrendered within days, and Hyderabad was forcibly annexed into the Indian Union. Thousands of Muslims were reportedly killed in the violence that followed. The Sunderlal Committee, commissioned secretly by Prime Minister Nehru of India, estimated 27 to 40k deaths. So this selective use of principle. So in Junagadh, another area in Hyderabad, India emphasized the will of the people because both had Hindu majorities but Muslim rulers. And in Kashmir, India emphasized, again, the ruler's decision is important. Whereas in Kashmir, there was a majority Muslim population and the ruler was Hindu. So this inconsistency undermined India's claim to moral superiority at partition. So there's obviously dissent in Kashmir because promises of a plebiscite were never fulfilled. And since the 1950s, India has manipulated local politics, removed elected leaders, and centralized control. And after the 2019 revocation of Article 370, it detained thousands, cut off internet access, and curbed press and civil liberties. And these acts were widely condemned internationally. The inconsistency around Kashmir is at the heart of the conflict, and it reveals how colonial politics, elite negotiations, and imperial expediency overrode principle. And let's look at the unfair language that's used. So you get Pakistani terrorism or state-sponsored terrorism when Pakistan does something, but the same language is not used when India acts forcefully. So you get terrorism versus security by the Indians. And when Pakistan supports militants in Kashmir, it's quickly labeled as state-sponsored terrorism. And but when India uses overwhelming military force, including killing civilians, mass detentions without trial, internet shutdowns, house demolitions, and curfews, these actions are framed as counter-terrorism or maintaining law and order or internal security. So this language sanitizes violence by the state and delegitimizes resistance, especially when it comes from oppressed or occupied populations. The power of labels is so strong. A Kashmiri with a gun is labeled a terrorist. An Indian soldier with a gun, on the other hand, is called a protector of national integrity. Yet both may be involved in violence, abuses, or extrajudicial actions. The question is who controls the narrative? And this is really across the board, and we see it um, because this is why we have so much anti-Muslim hatred and Islamophobia. So the international media and strategic alliances that India has, they have strong relationships with Western democracies such as US and UK, which often leads to more forgiving coverage. Pakistan is seen through the lens of Islamist extremism and is viewed as suspicion, is viewed with suspicion, especially after 9/11, but I would argue for much before. And as a result, Western media and governments often echo Indian terminology without questioning it. And the indigenous resistance is erased in Kashmir. Kashmiri opposition is often reduced to Islamic extremism or Pakistan meddling, ignoring the deep, organic, and long-standing grievances among local people. This dehumanizes them, their struggle, and obscures their demand for self-determination. So when state violence is normalized, such as India's actions in Kashmir, which would be condemned elsewhere, are often rationalized as necessary. So language like clashes, encounters, or militants neutralized make state-led killing sound clinical and justified. So in summary, language reflects power. The term terrorism is applied selectively depending on who is doing the killing, what their passport says, and who controls the narrative. This isn't just a moral issue, it shapes policy, public opinion, and international response. So we really need to dig deeper, learn more about the history, and read between the lines and look at who is controlling the narrative.